Dr. Eger, my goodness, this is one of the most special days of my life to be able to interview you. I've been looking forward to this. You're an incredible icon. You're someone that I really look up to. I have just already learned so much from you. And when I'm your age, I hope I look as beautiful as what you do. You're beautiful inside and out. And I'm just want to honor you for what you have done and your life's work. And I know an hour is not enough time, or even 50 hours is not enough time. But I just want to say thank you for everything you've done, and thank you for being willing to share your story with my listeners and viewers, because I know they're going to benefit incredibly. So welcome and thank you.
I thank you. Love is really time, a four-letter word, T-I-M-E, time, and that is wonderful. And you and I give people choices. How will they feel when they are in their deathbed, and not asking, what the world has given me, or how to not play the victim card.
Incredible. That's incredible. I love that. And it's so true. We don't have to play the victim card. And there's so many things around what you've just said that I would love to unpack. But one of the first things that I wanted to say, my first question is that I actually don't even know how to ask this question, but I've been working in the field of mental health for 38 years, been doing research for 38 years on mind and brain. I would have thought that I grew up in apartheid South Africa and dealing with very traumatic war zones and everything. I thought that I had seen a lot. Then I went to Auschwitz. And I visited and spent the day there having a private tour. And I don't even know how to verbalize the profound feelings that I experienced, but it comes nothing close to what you went through and how you've then taken that and turned that around into helping so many people. So I actually want to ask you, how would you like me to ask you about Auschwitz and your experience as a 16-year-old going into a concentration camp? I mean, as I said, I walked around there and it was devastating, and I'm still devastated 2 years later, yet you went through it.
We never forget. I never forget where I was and what happened. And today I speak what I lived. And thank God I'm able to tell you that I was a 16-year-old in love, and my boyfriend told me I have beautiful eyes and beautiful hands. And in Auschwitz, I would go to you, everyone, tell me about my eyes, tell me about my hands, because I said to myself, if I survive today, then tomorrow I'm going to see my boyfriend. Even though I was told every day, I'm never going to get out of here alive. So today, you and I guide people. It's not what happens, it's the way you view it. So I use a word that is meaningful to me, that Auschwitz was an opportunity for an opportunity, not to recover, but to discover that life is from inside out. That if you waited for someone else to make you happy or liberate you, you didn't make it. That I live in a present, I can only touch you now. That guilt is in the past, worry is in the future. So Auschwitz to me was a time when I was guided, because when people ask where was God in Auschwitz, I say God was with me and was able to guide me to see hatred as pity. And I decided that they were the prisoners, not me. And look at me, I'm here to tell you about it, that I couldn't change the outside. I could not change anything externally. I didn't know 4 o'clock in the morning where they're going to put me in a gas chamber. I didn't know when I took a shower whether gas or water is coming out. And that's why the COVID is so difficult for people, because it was unexpected and unanticipated. And we were told one thing and we found another. Auschwitz was a schoolroom, and each of us had to take care of each other, because if you were just for the me, you didn't make it. So that's why I like to bring the there and then to the here and now, that we create our own Auschwitz in our own mind, and the key is in our pocket.
That's incredible for you to be able to reconceptualize that experience from being, because you talk a lot about it being a survivor and not a victim. You've reconceptualized the whole picture and you've reconceptualized the whole experience, as horrific as it was. And that's so key, as you say, it's the key in your pocket, that reconceptualization.
This is a good time to look at COVID as time out. You are from Texas and you have the Cowboys, and time out is in football, and people take time out to regroup, to redecide. So it is a good time for people to think about their thinking and also pay attention what they're paying attention to. It's very important what you focus on, because anything you pay attention to, you reinforce that behavior, what you really want to extinguish. So that's why I ask people to think about your thinking and pay attention what you're paying attention to.
I absolutely love that. I've spent my whole career studying how the mind and the brain change as you are paying attention to something. Whatever you think about the most will grow, and it's determining your next reality.
By the way, nothing is original, because there was a philosopher called Epictetus. And Epictetus said, which is the whole beginning of therapy that I use very often as an adjunct. I do a lot of insight as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he said to us, and I quote, "It's not what happens makes you feel the way you feel, but the way you view it." Now that is really the key. It's not what happens, it's the way you view it. And you and I are good ophthalmologists, because we guide people to look everything as an opportunity to discover the strength, to discover how everything is temporary. And I can say, I don't like it, it's inconvenient, and it's temporary, and I can survive it, rather than yes, but. So I ask people, give me the but, and I give you an and. Yes, and. Life is difficult. Look up your birth certificate. Life, it doesn't have a guarantee. It's not easy. Okay, there is no guarantee, no certainty, but there is probability.
Oh gosh, you're speaking some of my favorite words.
The way you think, that's how you're going to feel.
There is probability. Just talk a little bit more about that. That is profound that you said that word. There's probability. That's something that a probability mindset is something that I speak about a lot. So please go ahead. I love what you're saying.
I like to say just one word that really kept me alive: curiosity. I always wanted to know what's going to happen next.
Wow.
So when I work with people who are suicidal, I say, you either have something what you don't want, or you want something what you don't have. So what do? You think about a Jewish boy whose name was Jesus, and he told us, love thy neighbor as thyself. That you get up in the morning in Texas and you look in the mirror and say, I love me. And it's not narcissistic, because you cannot give to others what you don't give to you. So it's very important that we're born alone, we die alone. There is something between birth and death called life. So when people ask me, where was God in Auschwitz? And I say, God was with me, guiding me to look at the guards, that they were the prisoners, not me. And the hatred became pity, feeling sorry for the guards, that they were brainwashed to telling me that I am poison to society, to telling me that the only way I will get out of here is a corpse. So you cannot change another person's thinking or feeling, but you can certainly recognize that you can differentiate between responding or reacting. Because when you react, you don't think, automatic. So I ask people to see the movie called The Karate Kid because the brain
Love it.
power is the best power. Remember, cleaning car. Yeah, patience.
Patience. And in this society today, people want a quick fix, don't they? They want the quick fix. They want to suppress. They want anything to get away from experiencing those life experiences.
And not only they want it easy, they want it now.
Yes.
They don't want to wait for anything. Instantly. I want it now. And I want it easy. That's a kid. That's a child thinking.
Yeah.
So I differentiate between being childish or being childlike.
I love how you do that. Please talk about that more. That is incredibly brilliant.
If you ask a child, why do you do that? And the child would say, because I feel like it. Now, as an adult, I still feel like it, but I don't act upon it unless it is in my best interest. You see? The kid doesn't care about consequences. I'm gonna eat this chocolate cake because I feel like it. Even the doctor told me not to have sugar. So none of the positive thinking does any good unless it's followed with a positive action.
Absolutely. Yeah, because a lot of people today will use a positive affirmation or something like that just to try and cover up all the work, but the issues. But however you're showing up in life is coming from what you've gone through and the perspective that you've developed, how you see it.
That is so true because I never ask patients, how can I help you? I say, how can I be useful to you? Because they just want to sit there. Okay, just go and fix me. If you don't want to do the work, you're not going to try on anything new because anything new is scary.
Yes.
We have the fear of the unknown, so we keep going back, doing the same thing over and over again.
Because there's that familiarity.
You hold someone's hand, and I do, that we guide them to look at the same thing from a different angle. And that's what you and I do, show a different perspective. This is your opportunity. This is now, you're locked in, went into the COVID. We cannot really change the outside, but I can change the way I look at it as time out for me, whether I like the person I live with, whether I'm capable of having adult relationship rather than being a mother or a child to my spouse. It's a wonderful time-out period. It's not what happens, it's what you do with it.
Oh, that's so powerful. And you've shown that.
The time doesn't heal.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. That's so good. Please elaborate on that. That's brilliant. Please elaborate on time doesn't heal. Please talk more about that.
If you are willing, if you're willing to feel the feelings, you're going to go through a journey of grieving, feeling, and healing. You cannot heal what you don't feel. So don't medicate grief. It's not an illness because what comes out of your body doesn't make you ill. So cry in the car. You can scream bloody murder and get it out. What comes out of your body doesn't make you ill. What stays in there does.
So good.
It's like a pus. You have to push it out, that pus. Otherwise, it can poison my whole body.
And that philosophy has been forgotten in this modern day and age because of, the advances of technology and medicine, which are wonderful, but it's made everyone want the quick fix. They just want to give me the Band-Aid, just give me the way to suppress it. And instead of working through it, to heal, it gets worse. It's the surgery. You've got to get cut up to get healed. And that's what we've got. And we get through it. As you said, you've got to feel it to heal it. The only way out is through.
Yeah, you cannot heal what you don't feel. And it's not an overnight process. It's really, I'm getting triggers all the time. I was watching a wonderful movie. It's called The Miracle Worker. Many, many years ago. It's the life of Helen Keller.
Oh, yes.
Remember her?
Yes,
She's
I
deaf,
do.
blind, and this wonderful woman is working with her. And one day they had dinner and they ran out of water. So she took a pitcher and took Helen, and they go outside and they are going fetching water. And this is the first time, after all this time they were working together, she began to talk and said water that took a long time. And that triggered in me that when I was liberated and I was put in a hospital and they put me in a cast and I could hardly talk because my lung was filled with water. And that's when I realized that my parents are not coming back. And I heard that my boyfriend was killed before. So the reality hit me, and I just wanted to die. When I got up in the morning, I didn't say what, I would say, what for? That's that existential vacuum that Viktor Frankl and I were very much talking about, that we never forget, but we can realize that not forgetting and not fighting it and run from it, but to look at it as something, that there was something in it. And that's my book, The Gift. Because someone, when it is a practical book, so this is a practical book, that the closer you are with the darkness, you're closer to suffering, and suffering will be making you stronger.
Your books are incredible. You've written the 2 books, and The Choice and The Gift, and you've got the 12 tips for helping people to understand how to process life, just kind of like how to get through life. And I know a lot of what you've been saying is encapsulated in that, but they're profoundly moving and life-changing and awe-inspiring and just so true. Every time I hear you or read your work, I think that's truth, that's wisdom. And if we learn to process that, we actually then can accept the pain and the suffering alongside the joy, and as you say, the what for.
Suffering is part of life. And some people are children who grow up very fast, like immigrants' children get parentized. When I came to America in 1949, my little girl was 2 years old, and she went to a daycare center. And there was a beautiful woman, a beautiful Christian woman, Mrs. Bowers, who took my child on, and I didn't have to pay. I was very poor.
Wow.
I didn't have $6 when I came to America. And then slowly she comes home and teaches me how to speak English.
Wow.
She wrote a book. A book was Chicken Little and Ducky Lucky and Goosey Lucy. Okay, picture me listening to my daughter teaching me how to speak
That's
English.
Brilliant.
But I didn't know Goosey Lucy from Turkey Lurkey. I didn't know which. So children get parentized. And then she told me that in the place where she goes, she's eating 2 things that I never heard of: peanut butter and tuna fish. I never saw in Hungary peanut butter. I don't know if they still ever have peanut butter in Hungary. I doubt it. But you see, so you have to know 2 questions I usually like to ask. When did your childhood end? And many children of immigrants become parents to the children.
Mm.
Or maybe you have a father who's alcoholic and the mother takes you and tells you, go find father somewhere in a bar. Or mother maybe is ill. She never gets rest because she has migraine headache. So I think it's very important to use COVID as time out and see when you did your childhood end. And then the second question is, would you like to be married to you, Caroline?
Oh, wow.
By the way, were you named after the Kennedy, Caroline?
No, I don't think so. My mother named me after my mom's Irish, so she named me after someone that she, yes. So I'm Irish Italian background, born in Zimbabwe, grew up in South Africa, live in America, married to a Swiss. So I don't quite know, a good mixture.
I call you a Renaissance woman.
There you go. I like that.
I'll send you my book. I'll send you my book, and I'm going to call you a Renaissance woman.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I'm going to send you my book, and it's called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, and it's flipped around, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, and it's basically, it's the science behind how we think, feel, and choose and build thoughts in our brain, and how our mind changes our brain and influences our life. It's the science behind what you're teaching so profoundly and brilliantly. So I'd love to send you a copy, and just if you ever want to read it. But your lessons that you're teaching, and that question, like that second question now, where you say, would I like to be married to me? That's such a good question. So how do you answer that?
I like to really say that because in my generation, a boy gets very different messages.
Yes.
You're going to be the lawyer or the doctor and so on. But you tell the little girl, you're going to find somebody because you're nobody until somebody loves you.
Yeah.
I am a somebody. You see, it's a very different message that I have to grow up to be like a fruit, and then somebody is going to pick me. And that's not anymore.
No.
Because the pioneer woman in America worked alongside with her husband.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They were in a modern marriage. They both got up, they both went to work, and this is really what we want, a little girl to become independent emotionally and financially before she gets married.
That's so important.
People to stay in school, yeah.
No, that's
because
really important.
The more papers you pick up in America, the more choices you have. More doors open up for you.
Oh, absolutely. And that's so vitally important. But that's then also, let's bring that back to your profound insight into the concept of choice. You're very big on choice. And I love to hear you talk about that, because I always talk about how our mind is how we think and feel and choose. And we're always doing that. And you talk about responding versus reacting. And you talk about how it's in our mind. So I'd love you to just talk a little bit about choice. And I'd love you to relate that back to your experience as well in Auschwitz, and how you, as a 16-year-old, how did you see choice in your life at that point, and how do you see it now, and the change and the growth?
I look at Auschwitz, and all I could think of, that Auschwitz was hell. And I'm going to tell you the difference between reacting, because Hans Selye got the Nobel Prize for stress studies.
Yes.
And he said, when anything stressful happens to us, we have two automatic responses: we fight or flee. In Auschwitz, that didn't work, because if you touch the guards, they were shot right away, right in front of me. So I knew not what to do, what not to do. If you wanted to flee, and if you touched the barbed wires, you would have been electrocuted. So I learned to flow, the third alternative, to study the external circumstance, and what can I do that I can do. I cannot change the externals. They could have put me in unfortunately, the gas chamber any minute, When I took a shower, I didn't know whether water or gas is going to come out. So I learned that it's up to me how I am able to turn hatred into pity and starting to feel sorry for the guards. And somehow I looked at that uniform and I felt so sorry for them that they were brainwashed because children were spitting at us when we were evacuated, and children were calling us pigs and crying. I was crying, thinking, these children are brainwashed. You see, we're not born to hate
No.
and judge. We
No.
learn it.
Yes. It's a
So
learned
that's why
response.
your self-dialogue is so important. You get up in the morning and you say, Caroline, and I love you, and I'm going to release, do so much good because life is just one day. The morning sunshine doesn't come back, and every moment is precious, and we don't seem to appreciate what we have until we lose it.
Oof.
So I have a hard time throwing away food, even though my daughter tells me it's okay to leave food on your plate, Mom. I still gonna eat your food or take it home. I don't want to throw out even a piece of bread ever.
Oh, I can
If I
imagine
can.
that because that's significant of what you had gone through. So all these traumas that you've gone through. So what I'm hearing you say, your choices came from the inside out. You turned the hatred into the pity. You saw it differently. You lived for every moment. You woke up in the morning thinking, okay, I can, if I can get through today, I can see tomorrow. So you were making internal choices because you couldn't control the external. So your survival came from very much going inward. And then also you said connecting with others. You talked about how you connect with others. And you talk about one story of they asked you to dance and you did this beautiful dance and you were gymnast and you could do all these beautiful dances. And you realized that if you didn't dance, they would maybe have shot you or whatever. And then they gave you some bread and you shared the bread. And then you speak about being in community. So you have two profound things. It's the me in community and it's also the internal choice of me, of looking at things differently in a different perspective. And it was all coming from inside. Talk about that. It's profound.
You're so present. Thank you. Thank you. Because he came to the barracks and he wanted to know who are the newcomers who are talented because he wanted to be entertained. So my friends just threw me in front of him because I was the one who danced for the president in Hungary,
Wow.
Admiral Horthy. And he said to me, dance for me. And I realized that I better do as I am told. And I closed my eyes and I pretended that the music was Tchaikovsky. And I was dancing the Romeo and Juliet in a Budapest opera house. So you see, when a woman calls me and makes an appointment, I became a diplomate in sexology long time ago, working with someone called Albert Ellis in cognitive psychology. Someone was sent to me by the judge, and he was 14 years old, and he told me, I am a boot boy. It was in Texas. Okay? So I acknowledged his boots, and I know nothing about boots for sure. Okay? And then he got up and he put his elbow on my desk and said the following, and I quote, "Hey, Doc, it's time for America to be white again."
Oh, I remember the story.
Okay. Imagine how I felt in January 6th this year when they were wearing a shirt. 6 million was not enough. You can imagine how I felt. So let me go back. And he says to me, "Hey, Doc, America has to be white again, and I'm going to kill all the Jews."
Oh,
And then use the N word. I don't even want to say. And then Mexicans and the Chincos. Now, if I would have reacted, I would have dragged him to the corner I would have hold him and tell him, who do you think you're talking to? Because I saw my mother go to the gas chamber. But I knew that people are sent to me. They don't come to me. So I go to God and I say, what do I do with this guy who joined a white supremacy group in Waco, Texas, called David Koresh?
Yeah,
You remember that?
I
Okay.
do.
And guess what God tells me? Find the bigot in you. And I said to God, it's impossible.
Wow.
It's impossible. I'm not a bigot. I had Nazi Germany. I had communist Russia. I came to America and I went to the bathroom in the factory where I did the piecework, and one of them said colored. So love is not what you feel, is what you do. I gathered the women of color. I asked them to take me to a meeting, to ANCP, and in 1963, I was part of the time when I sang with Martin Luther
That's
King,
incredible.
Washington, with the mamas and the papas.
Wow.
We shall overcome. And so it's love is not what you feel, it's what
It's
you
what
do.
you do.
So if you're married, I don't know, but if you are married, children don't do what we say.
They do what we do.
They say. Yeah.
I agree with that.
So
I've got
you
4
never
children. I
raise your
agree with
voice.
that.
It's the way you teaches the children's mother, and that's you. So I really love to talk to couples because the best thing for children is a happy marriage.
Oh, absolutely. That what you've just said there is profound, and I've heard you tell that story of marching with Martin Luther King and that young boy. I mean, it's just how you actually the way you phrased it in the one, and I think it's in the one of your books where you phrased it that he was trained to hate by the white supremacist David Koresh. He was trained to hate, and how you could have reacted, but you didn't react that way. You responded, and in that response, you taught him a lesson. He learned something new. So you would have had you don't know what impact you had on him, but what you show in that story is about the profoundness of taking the time to, like you say, even in COVID, is to really take stock, and see, are you responding or are you reacting? And like we want to defend, yeah.
I've been lecturing all over the world, so I'm not going to tell you where I was, but I was speaking to very successful people. And one of the persons told me that his mother is 71 years old and she's never seeing the grandchildren anymore because she's still angry at her mother who died when she was 16. And he assured me that mother cannot be helped because she had all the medications and nothing really helped. But would I be so kind to see the mother, even though he knows I can do nothing for mother? And I said, okay, just send her over. And I'm in a beautiful hotel, at the best in the world. Okay, so I see this woman coming in, and she spoke a little bit with a Polish accent. And so I don't speak Polish, but I could relate to her. But I asked her a question, where is your mother buried? And I said it with the accent that I heard. Yeah. And she said, in the cemetery, but not like I say it now, in a different way. Because I learned to meet people where they are. And so I kind of looked up. I only had an hour. I said to her, your mother needs you now. This is called reframing. Mm-hmm. And she looked at, no one ever heard that. My mother needs me. I said, yes, your mother needs you, because no loving mother would ever want their children not to live a full life. Mm-hmm. So I want you to go to the cemetery. but I said it the way I needed to say in
Yes.
her accent. And I want you to realize that she needs you so she can rest in peace
Mm.
and not until you are able to have a meaningful life and loving your children and grandchildren. I got letters from the
Wow.
family. I cannot tell you, thanking me 1 hour. And all I did is change the way
Reframe,
you
reconceptualize. That what you said right
the
in the
way-
beginning, how you view something.
and
So how you view something
that's
completely determines the consequence, the outcome. Completely shifts the
complete.
whole perspective.
Just
The whole thing just shifts. That's incredible. This is why you'd say that you're a guide as opposed to being a therapist. You actually guide people, which I love
thank you so
because
much.
no, I love that because I agree with that because we can't fix anyone. All we can do is try and show them another perspective and try and help them to do the work and support them in that
If they're
process
ready, if they're ready,
if they're ready.
if they're
Yeah,
ready, because every behavior satisfies a need. And
that's powerful.
there, some people have the need to be needed. So they always find
Mm.
someone who has the need to be taken care of. I had a woman who was about to marry her fifth alcoholic husband.
Oh
Do
my
you think
goodness.
that's an ex?
That's
You do the
definitely,
familiar. You do
yeah,
the familiar.
a disservice. So that's a need to be, every behavior is fulfilling some sort of need. So as a guide, you would show someone what to identify that need. Is that how you would approach it?
Well, I actually become very dumb. I put myself in a one down position. And pretty soon, I don't speak English well. I can get away with it, you see. So when I come to America and I am with you and I see a sign, choice, and I look at that person, could you help me? How do you understand that word, choice? And then I hear how that person is really viewing everything, whether it's visual, audio, or kinesthetic. Because one of my students told me that in America, people are hearing but not listening. And I said, well, let's test it out. Tomorrow morning, when you pick up your books, somebody's going to say hello to you. Yeah. And instead of usually what you say, I like you to say very quietly, my mother died this morning.
Mm.
Wait, I'll see you later. People are hearing and
Not listening.
That's why I ask people, don't ask why, what, how are you? That's the stupidest thing you can ask. They're going to say, fine, fine,
Yeah.
fine, everything. No, I rather say many times, never, how are you? I say, geez, good to see you. I missed you. I make a sentence because I create the environment that you can
Wow.
feel any feeling without the fear of being judged.
Mm.
So it's very important to know to set the atmosphere. And that's what you do. You create the atmosphere, but then it's up to them whether they are willing. That's a very good word. Willing to be willing to go through the pain and revisit the places where you've been.
Yeah.
And relive that experience. But you're not there, you're here with me. And that's the work with post-traumatic stress reaction. No, no pathologizing. We pathologize too much.
Oh, I
It's
agree
good to
so much. Yeah, I agree. I love how you say we pathologize too much. And I wanted to transition to trauma. So let's carry on with this discussion of, the PTSD and how we shouldn't be labeling and trauma and pathologizing. Talk about trauma. And talk about your trauma in terms of how you got through it and how you've translated that into the experiences that you now help people as a guide and as you have for the last 40 years, 50 years.
A trauma is very important because in some ways we hand things down from generation to generation.
Absolutely.
But we can stop it. And that is trauma. That we must really acknowledge that in some ways we are victims of victim. But many people see victim as being weak and victimizers as being strong. So part of the psyche can identify with the aggressor. And that's what we call the Stockholm syndrome.
I was going to talk to you about that too, yeah.
So this is what I learned when this girl's father was a big wheel in America and had a castle here in California, the Hertz Castle. So the messages that we carry with us is so very important. Yeah. So very important. So that's why the victim can easily become, yesterday's victims easily can become today's victimizers. So it's very important who carries that victim mentality, the victim's card, because you cannot be a victim without a victimizer.
That is so true. So how do you speak into that? How do you help someone who has that, who is battling with trauma and there's this generational trauma and they've maybe gone through their own set of additional trauma growing up in early childhood, or like yourself? I mean, you went through this terrible trauma of Auschwitz and for years you had flashbacks, and how did you deal with it yourself, and how have you helped? What advice can you give people who are having flashbacks or experiencing trauma, as well as talking about the labels? Let's bring a little bit about how we shouldn't pathologize. Can you just take that a little deeper as well?
I usually tell people to celebrate that they have the choice to die, because it's easier to die than to live.
Wow.
Very important that you either have something what you don't want or you want something what you don't have. So I am really seeing how people can recognize how you think about your thinking, and you had the choice and you chose to be for something rather than I don't like that, I don't like that. So one of my patients was in a marathon and she stopped. At a certain point, she didn't think she can go further. And she ran into my office. I did it, what you said. And I said, what did I say? I don't know what I said. And you told me, yes, I am. Yes, I can. Yes, I will. Yes, I am. Wow. Yes, and I'm here. So say yeses. Yes, I am. I'm one of a kind. There'll never be another me. Many people can do what you can do, but not the way you can do it. You're unique. You're one of a kind, diamond. There'll never, ever be another you. So I like the yeses rather than I don't like that. I don't want that. I'm not interested. I believe. I'm not interested. What I'm interested in, what kind of life you lead. Show me.
Because how you show up is indicative of how you are thinking.
Show me evidence. Yeah. If you go to a judge, they say, give me evidence.
Absolutely.
That you committed to someone other than you. Because all we had was each other there, and all we have is each other now.
No, that's incredible.
So I was lucky enough to be interviewed by Brené Brown.
I know. I listened to that interview. Beautiful. Wonderful interview.
She was so adorable. But she speaks English, Texas. And yes. I speak English as an immigrant.
Yes.
And we see the same thing. Both talk about vulnerability and shame and so forth.
Yes.
But her English and my English, I was just kind of smiling inside.
Yes.
And I told her, I want to bake a cake and sent her a Hungarian
I remember
cake.
that, yes. The chocolate cake.
Chocolate cake. And now we are in touch how we can send her. chocolate cake. But she also promised me when I go to Texas, I'm going to have the best primary ever.
Yes.
Because I love meat in Texas. You have good meat in Texas.
Yeah, you'll have the good prime rib. I heard that too. My kids love the prime rib as well. So that was a great interview. I heard you on that one as well. It was really wonderful. You also spoke about getting highlights together, which was funny. So I thought the blonde highlights, that was a funny little anecdote that you gave over there as well. I loved how you said that. So it's
the girl talk, yeah.
The girl talk. We got to throw, but we got to go through it. What would we do without our highlights? I mean, you got to throw a bit of girl talk in there. So, but just coming full circle back, I would love to just circle back a little bit to when you were in hospital. You mentioned earlier on, and you were freed, and you woke up and you wanted to just die, and then you went through. You talk about in your books and in your story how you had flashbacks and the trauma that you had gone through, because all those experiences. I mean, you were tortured, you were starved, you lost your parents on the first day that you got there, and your boyfriend. I mean, all these things, because so many people that listen to this podcast, they are dealing, as is everyone. You also make the comment that, people all have trauma and different types of trauma. Obviously, yours was extreme, and a lot of people listening to this have had extreme trauma too. Can you talk about what you went through? How did your healing journey, just briefly, I know it's a long healing journey, but just to give people a bit of an understanding of how you understand trauma in your own life, and what did you do? And why shouldn't we pathologize trauma? Why should it be depathologized?
When I get interviewed, sometimes I go somewhere and then I go somewhere else, which I did
fine.
here.
No problem.
I started to tell you the movie that I watched with
the Miracle.
Keller.
Yes.
And as she was fetching the water, I had a flashback that when I was liberated, I didn't know how to write. And I did not know how to write a capital G. I was practicing. So that's what I wanted to say about that and finish that one.
Beautiful.
Because I was like a little animal. I didn't know how to even go to the bathroom. I would go to the bathroom and sit on somebody else was already there. I know it was so important to really decide everything that I'm not there anymore. I'm here now. I have choices. So we all have had trauma one way or another. So when I became a diplomate in sexology, I remember the woman comes to me and told me that she was very inappropriately touched. Soon I'm going to say about that. But then she said, I don't know how to tell you because you were in Auschwitz. And my answer was, you may have been more in prison than I was because I knew the enemy.
Wow.
You carried your secret. How old are you? She says 49.
Wow.
Now that you want to do. Change that. And the opposite of depression is expression.
Yes.
My daughter calls
Love
it
how you say
Edism. The other one is, are you revolving or are you evolving?
So
good. That is, my daughter calls Edism. But you see, I just say what I lived. And so that's my truth. It's not the truth because I wanted to go back to Auschwitz when I began to work with people and I had real problems with anger. And
I wanted to ask you about anger too, yeah. And you told your sister.
I told Magda, my sister, I want to go back to Auschwitz. I want to go back to that place. I want to go look at that lion in the face. And my sister said, you're an idiot. You're a masochist. We go through the same experience, entirely different responses. So that's why the reaction or responding is very, very important. So the young man, when I talked to God and I was told to look at the bigot in me, I created the atmosphere for a 14-year-old boy who gave up all the freedom to some narcissistic whoever David Koresh was. And I told her, please tell me more, because love is time. Time. He
Beautiful. That's
never
profound.
knew my history, nothing. But you see, when I become the mother, I give you what I know as a mother, but I cannot make a boy into a man. It takes a man. So that's why I worked with him and I gave him the loving mother. And then I referred him to a man from a 12-step program who has gray hair. I have a great respect for the 12-step program because, to went to Carl Jung, and Carl Jung told them addiction cannot be treated with psychotherapy because it's a spiritual issue. So the work you see, what you do, it comes from your soul, from your heart.
From your mind, yeah.
It's and then you bring in that cortex, that Piaget is the person that I used to teach the development ages and stages. Took a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, okay. And the 4-year-old looks at two little things and say, is it the same? Yes. And then took one of them and made it bigger like a hot dog. And which one is bigger? The 4-year-old said the hot dog. 8-year-old said it's the same. See, when you're 8 years old, 7, 8 years old, we begin to develop our frontal lobe. So don't talk to a 4-year-old about cognitive dissonance.
No.
You won't know what for sure.
Absolutely not.
Know the ages. And so it's very good that what you're doing, you really know who you're talking to. And hopefully, as I told you, none of the positive thinking do any good until I tell you tomorrow morning, I'm not going to put sugar in my tea.
Yeah, you've got to go back. And so what I'm hearing you say is like the example you gave of going back to Auschwitz and to revisit that. You're telling people you've got to address the person at the level they're at, but you've also got to go back to the roots, and you've got to work through, and you've got to reconceptualize that anger and make sure that you've shifted from being a victim into a survivor. So there's a shifting, and that's internal work.
See, we went anger. There's a lot of pain under anger. There's a lot going on underneath it all. When people are angry, it's okay to be angry. It's how you channel it.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of pain there. And people say, I have an anxiety attack and this and that. What is going on is that
an underlying issue.
You look at everything, the way you look at everything as an opportunity. And that's how I think of Auschwitz, that I discovered looking at life from inside out and not wait for someone to make me happy. No one makes you happy. So I hope you have self-love, self-care. It's not narcissistic.
No, I love that. That's beautiful. You've said that. Gosh, you're just brilliant. I have so many questions, but you hit them all, but just about all of them. I wanted to ask you, and you've briefly alluded to this, but you talk about the worst prisons that, I've got my questions down below here, so I'm just reading them from my computer. You talk about the worst prisons are the ones we build for ourselves. And that's such a profoundly important statement. Could you just talk for a moment about that, about these prisons that we build for ourselves? And you gave the analogy of when you were in Auschwitz, you were in a prison, but that actually those guards were more imprisoned than anyone else. And so it's how you look at yourself. So I'd love you to just talk a little about that.
Well, in the daytime, I did everything I was told, but they took my blood many, many times. And one time I asked, why are you taking my blood? And he spoke to me in German. I understood everything. He says, I'm taking your blood to aid the German soldiers so we can win the war and we can take over the world, especially America.
Wow.
I say to myself, I couldn't yank my arm away, maybe I wouldn't be here telling you about it. But I said to myself, what a stupid idiot you are. With my blood,
Oh,
I was a ballerina. You going to win the war? You know, that humor, it's how you respond and not
wow.
allow. No Nazi can ever murder my spirit.
Wow.
So look for the Nazi in you. It's
Wow.
there. We start us and them and us and them. No, 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 we're all together.
So this is a key because that's how you didn't become a prisoner of your mind. And people become prisoners of their mind because they're getting stuck in the victim mentality. Is that correct? Is that how or feeling hopeless?
You cannot be a victim without a victimizer. So that's why yesterday's victims can easily grow up to be victimizers or marry one.
Or marry one. So did you see that those people those Nazis taking your blood? Were you seeing them as you didn't allow them to control you? Yes, they took your blood, but they didn't take your mind. You still still kept your control inside of you. Is that how you managed that situation? So what do you mean is that what you mean by not being a prisoner of your mind?
You have so much brilliant answers. Yes, it means that I could do many, many things, but never murder my spirit, that I bring it. So that's how they were the prisoners, not me.
Love it. Then you make another statement that I found fascinating. Everything you say is fascinating, brilliant, and profound, and everyone needs to read your book and listen to you because you really teach what it means to be human. I just have to honor you for that. So in respect for your time, and you've been so generous with your time, the last thing I want to say is you make a comment that if you still have to prove yourself to someone, let me get the exact wording. If you still have to prove yourself to someone, you are still controlled. Let me find the exact. If you have something to prove, you are still a prisoner, and to live in reaction to someone your whole life makes you a prisoner. That's just so profound, and I think people live like that.
Yeah, very, very quickly. When you're born, I'm talking to my grandson right now. When you're born, then I'm the woman who holds you. See?
Yeah.
I am the woman who holds you. That's a relationship which is very different from a father and a son. The son looks at dad in a more competitive way and decides, I want to be just like him, or I want to be everything he's not. And I know that happened because his father got the Nobel Prize in economics, and that was a very hard act to follow. And he wanted to be an actor. Done. Okay, so then the son grows up and he either becomes just like the father, or he wants to prove something that he's going to do everything that he's not his father. And while you want to prove something, you're still a prisoner.
So good. That's such a profound insight that we can look at ourselves, because we've spoken a lot here today about being, the physical imprisonment that you had in Auschwitz. You have translated that into how as humans we can be imprisoned. All these terrible events and circumstances can happen. But if we understand our mind and how we have choice, we don't have to be prisoners of our own mind. And then that's how we can actually transition through the sufferings of life, if that's what I'm hearing you say.
It is so wonderful. I ask fathers especially, what happens when you go to work and your child is still asleep? And what happens when you come back? Your child is already asleep. And then you work so hard so you can send your child to MIT that you don't know.
You don't even know your child.
So you have a teenager, who's ready to go to college too. Just dump him in a truck or go fishing and then tell your son, when I was in your age, make it up. I was so afraid of the teacher. I thought I was going to pee in my pants. So the son would look at dad.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's human.
Oh my God, I'm not a weirdo. I'm not such a weirdo.
Yeah.
And develop an atmosphere that the father and a son could truly get to know each other. I think we have a lot of fear, and I've never seen love coming out of fear.
Cannot coexist.
Fear and
Yeah.
love does not coexist.
No,
in my
they
book.
cannot. No, I agree with you there totally.
Not born with fear, and you don't need years and years of therapy. You put them down from the least anxiety producing to the most anxiety producing. So if I'm going to work with you, and if you're afraid of heights, believe me, I'm not going to put you to the Empire State Building. I'm going to probably tell you to go home and sit on a table. And then maybe I take you to an elevator that you gradually go from the least anxiety producing. I could not tell you how much I enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, I can't tell you enough. It's just you profound, you beautiful inside and out, and you teach the world what it means to be human. And I want to thank you and I want to honor you. And as I said in the beginning, I hope that when I'm your age, I'm impacting the world like you're impacting the world. And you're profound and you're an icon, and I honor you and thank you for all the beautiful lessons you have that you teach us. Thank you for sharing your time with me and my viewers and listeners today.
I thank you so much. Just think young and live in the present.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It's been beautiful and wonderful. Thank you too.
God bless you.
Thank you, and you too.